Good evening, everybody. We're starting the Finance Committee a little bit late. I apologize for that. It is 6:07. Okay. The first thing we want to talk about is temporary ordinance 1524, a resolution authorized the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the purchase of chemicals for use by the Division of Water. I don't see, oh, come on up. We got Superintendent Drum.
Yeah, this is our annual chemical bid we do each year for the Division of Water. These chemicals are used in our treatment process at both of our treatment facilities. We go out to bid for soap, phosphate, and anti-scalant, and I'm requesting authorization to advertise for bid and enter into a contract. No suspension on readings will be necessary.
Okay. Michael, you're the sponsor, and you're okay with 3 readings, please? Thank you. We've got, you're going to cover the next one then. Temporary resolution 16-24, a resolution to authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the purchase of pipe and fittings for use by the Division of Water.
Yep, this is also an annual piece where we restock our inventory and our distribution system. This allows us opportunity to receive competitive pricing and by purchasing and replenishing our yearly supply of materials at one time. Again, I'm asking authorization to go out to bid and enter into a contract for our annual pipe and fitting bid. Also, 3 readings would be fine with this. No suspension is necessary.
Thank you, Councilman Wing. You're fine with that? 3 readings?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. The next resolution is temporary resolution 17-24, a resolution to amend the Utility Collection Fund 7006 expense budget and amend the certificate of appropriation with the county auditor. That is the Finance Committee piece of legislation. And I'm not sure if Auditor Nettles or Superintendent Hintz would like to address this.
Hello. Our expense budget exceeded our revenue budget by $208,000. So we're asking to reduce our expenditures by that amount so that it balances out.
Thank you. Any questions of council? Auditor Nettles, you had...
Nope, she said it perfectly.
And 3 readings sufficient?
3 readings is sufficient.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you coming up. Next item is temporary resolution 1824, a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids to construct the concrete discharge improvement project. And that's coming from Water Pollution Control. Councilman Wing, I guess you should be introduced, not me. Sorry. You're going to have someone speak on it. Denise, I see Denise here.
Good evening. Welcome to construction season. I just finished up the books from last year, and last year we spent about $48.8 million on capital improvement projects between water, wastewater, and stormwater, and so we're getting ready to start into the 24 construction season. This legislation will authorize the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids for the concentrate discharge improvement lines. This is the pipe that we call the question mark. It sits at Maple and Canal Street. It's the outfall for the concentrate line from the South Water Plant, where it goes into the sewer to the Lawrence Street wastewater plant. We have been, for 3 years, trying to study the issues revolving around this line. We've made several repairs. This, we hope, is kind of wrapping this up. We've got a few more changes at the South Water Plant, but this is going to elevate the line about 30 feet, so it'll match the high elevation on the line at White's Hill. So it will go up, it will come back down. It will eliminate some problems we're having with solids building up in the line and with air entrainment in the line, which causes some other issues in the line. And we hope to advertise for bids at the end of February with an estimated cost of $300,000. We haven't asked for the authorization to enter in the contract because bidding prices are still all over the place. So until we actually get a bid, we don't want to ask you to enter into the contract. We'll be back in March to do that.
3 readings sufficient?
3 readings are fine.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Denise. The next item is temporary resolution 19-24, a resolution to create a new new fund named Violet Township City of Lancaster JED Fund 8058, and to establish revenue and expense accounts. I'd like to call on Auditor Nettles to discuss this, please.
Yes, this is, City Council last year passed an ordinance to create the JED between the City of Lancaster and Violet Township. This is legislation to create funding to put the income taxes collected for the employees at the wigwam. And once we get those, we're mandated by the contract to set aside those funds separate. So this is the legislation to create the fund.
Thank you. Any questions of council?
And may I request a suspension? It says on there 2 readings, but I need to get this passed and suspended in January because the income tax director is making collections in January, started January 1st, and we're required to make a monthly distribution to Violet Township.
Okay, thank you. Any opposition to suspend? Then we will have 1 reading, suspend the 2nd and 3rd readings. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item is temporary resolution 20-24. This is a resolution to increase receipts, appropriate the unencumbered balance, and amend certificate and other sources and appropriations with the county auditor in Violet Township, City of Lancaster, JED Fund 8058. Also, Auditor Nettles, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yes, this is the anticipated revenue and expense budget for that new JED fund. I received this information from the county auditor that is in meetings with the JED board, that is the estimated revenue and the expense, and we have to get that created in this new fund as well in order for us to make any payments out to Violet Township. So, and this one, I would also respectfully request it to be passed and suspended with 1 reading so we can get everything set up, get the budget set up, so when the income tax director needs to pay Violet Township, she can do so.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from council or questions or concerns regarding suspending this, please? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is temporary resolution 21-24, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and the general fund 1001, authorized then and now certificates for payments of the invoice for annual codification and to declare an emergency. This is also a finance committee resolution. And I believe I'd like to call on Law Director Hall, please.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Excuse me. So as you all know, we undertook a major overhaul of the city's zoning code in 2023, and we provided that to our codification company back in November. At the time, we anticipated the codification being more expensive as a result of that. Typically, it runs around $6,000, $7,000. So I added an additional $3,000 to the budget, hoping that that would cover it. Unfortunately, because we added a lot of graphics and a lot of tables to make it more user-friendly, it was significantly more than that, and it took them longer than they thought it would to get that done. So they communicated with Teresa at the beginning of this year. The $10,000 that we had budgeted for last year rolled back into the general fund. It was not expended, obviously, because we did not get our codification done in time. So we will need to appropriate enough money to get it done now, and it will be with a then and now certificate it because the work was started in 2023, and we're going to pay for it here in 2024, and we had to close the 2023 purchase order and open a new 2024. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
When is the payment due that they need to have this?
I honestly don't know. Teresa is the one who is responsible for that. I would say by the end of the month is my guess.
Okay.
Typically,
Well, 'cause I
we have
think
30 days
it's
on.
2 readings, and this
That was my next question
is
is,
if maybe. we
If you'd
should-
like to suspend and pass, that'd be great. If not, I'm not that concerned about it. Teresa was the one who obviously did the legislation, and she knows when the bill is due, so.
Because if it's due by the end of the month, and this is the last month, and meeting in the month, don't want to be late on.
I appreciate that, but like I said, she did the legislation, so she would know how many days, or how many readings and how much time she had to pay that.
good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Law Director Hall. We'll do 2 readings on temporary resolution 2124. The next one is temporary resolution 22-24, a resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the wastewater replacement and improvement fund 6023, authorize the issuance of then and now certificates for payment of the bills. And this is coming from water pollution control. And Chairman Wayne?
Yes, this is actually a very simple piece of legislation, just reappropriating carryover from last year.
Okay. And you would like to
One reading,
suspend
please.
one
Yes.
reading? Questions? Anything, issues with suspension? Thank you. We will suspend a temporary resolution 2324. Next item is temporary resolution 24-24, a resolution to increase receipts appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor in the fire insurance escrow fund 8023. Again, this is coming from finance, and I would again defer to Auditor Nettles for.
Councilmember Wolfinger, I think we skipped, 2324 is about utilities, and I think we skipped it.
I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you for catching me. Then we'll back up. Resolution to 2324 is to approve a then and now for payment of a January 2024 bill for the Utility Collections Fund 7006. And again, I believe we've got Superintendent Hintz and/or Auditor Nettles to talk about this.
Yeah, this is just it's our monthly software, and we basically missed the purchase order deadline of January 5th. So we're just asking for 1 reading so we can get it paid. So,
I'm good with that.
I'm sorry, I
that's all right.
jumped ahead of you again, and I'll explain in a
I knew
second.
the president would take care of it.
There you go.
Get us steer back in the right direction.
If there's no objections or no comments from council, thank you for your
Thank you.
explanation. Thank you. And now we're on to 2024 temporary resolution, and I will read this again, see if I can do any better. A resolution to increase receipts and appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor in the fire insurance escrow fund. Then that's also coming from finance and Auditor Nettles.
Yes, this is a fund that we put in the fire insurance checks, that when there is a fire and our building department deems that a house is not available to be occupied, the insurance company cuts the city a check, which we have to keep in escrow. We set it aside until the building department can give an occupancy permit. Then they in turn give us permission to refund the check or pay back the check. So in order to do so and let the building department facilitate the whole process, I need to set a budget in that fund. So if they would get a request for a refund for a past fire, that everything's been done appropriately to city code, then we can get those funds back to the individual. So this can go 3 readings, knock on wood, that no one requests or has any drawdowns, but if so, we'll work around that. But yeah, this can go 3 readings.
Thank you. Questions of Auditor Nettles? Are there any other resolutions to be brought before council? Then I do want to make a comment real quick. Being our first time for many of us at the table, I have to apologize. I've walked on a couple of you because I'm reading the resolutions. 2 things I didn't do. If it's not the Finance Committee, I should defer to the individual chair. And Michael had about 3 of them, and I got kicked on that one, so I apologize for that. And Larry, that was the same thing that was your resolution. And also, I believe I need to verify who is making the motions for each resolution and second it, or is that what's printed acceptable, Mr. President?
Typically, you would just reference that when you're reading it out and make sure that that's okay with them. And tonight's fine, we're good.
Okay, yeah, because I do not set these names. The clerk sets the names, and then I think she has a pattern, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the chair of the committee is the one that sponsors makes the motion for the resolution as we get into the deal. If you wonder, if you're on the committee and you're not called on to make the motion, that's because it defers to the chair of that particular committee, and you're all on a chair of a committee somewhere along the line. Thank you for allowing me to, Mr. President, explain that and apologize to proceedings. We'll move on to ordinances. I have temporary ordinance 10-24. An ordinance to authorize the mayor to deed approximately 21.746 plus or minus acres owned by the city of Lancaster and further identified as Fairfield County, Ohio, parcel number 05318000450 for $1 to the Lancaster Port Authority and to execute any and all documents necessary for the transfer thereof and to declare an emergency. This is brought forth by the Economic Development Committee, and I defer to Councilman Hoop.
Yes, I think we want to ask, oh, she's already there, Stephanie, to explain.
I have some handouts. I think I have about 10, so maybe if you want to go every other person, you could just take one and pass it on. There's 3 in all.
That's okay, I don't need one. I've seen it all.
So I want to start, first of all, by introducing myself because I know I don't know everybody. So my name's Stephanie Bosco. I'm the Executive Director of the Lancaster Port Authority, and I have a dual role as the Economic Development Director for the city. I started in January of 22 with Mike Pettit at the Port Authority and took over in July of 2022 when he retired. I have 14 years of economic development experience, and that includes about 10 years with One Columbus. One Columbus is our regional network partner of Jobs Ohio. Grow-Licking County, which was a county-level public-private partnership, and also a short but insightful time in the city of Grove City. I've compared Grove City to Lancaster quite a bit, same population, lots of differences, lots of similarities. So the Port Authority's mission is to attract and retain employers to create career opportunities for the workforce. And we have a special emphasis on manufacturing because we've got this, you all know, this long history of manufacturing in our community. The Port Authority, long before I came, but not that long ago, led the main role in developing the Rock Mill Industrial Park as the 33 bypass was coming in the early aughts. Mike Pettit and I believe it was Mayor Smith, they played a critical role in laying down millions of dollars of infrastructure, and it really helped attract businesses to the Rock Mill Industrial Park. The Port Authority initiated the gas prepaid deal, which allows the port to sell discounted gas to the city, and it also funds economic development activities that the city can utilize, that the Port Authority utilizes. And the port recently started a housing initiative called Housing in the Middle, and so it's somewhat related to this because we're talking about attainable housing here for our workforce. What the Port Authority did was designed a triplex, so that's two-story townhouses, and that's three units. And we are working with a developer. We were able to acquire some land from the land bank, and the developer is going to build it, and it's going to be more affordable housing for our workforce. The port is led by a small group of board of directors, and in both my roles as the Port Authority, as the Economic Development Director of the city, I interface with all developers. I work very closely with the mayor, the current mayor, the past mayor, and I market the city to new and existing employers. I negotiate city and port incentives, and they align with what the city wants and needs. And again, I work closely with the mayor, and we're constantly talking about what does the city want, what does the city need, what are we hearing from our citizens. So last January, we had a developer named Zinken and Barker. They're based out in Indianapolis, reached out to us and said, we found this property, and you guys can see on the one of the handouts that you have. I'm gonna pull out mine. So this map right here, the pink property is the property that we're gonna discuss tonight. This is a city-owned property. It's about 21 acres. And they reached out to us and they said, we're proposing an income-based workforce housing project for this property. They identified this site, and they're proposing 144 units. You may want to grab your pens. You may listen and retain much better than I do. They're going to build 144 units. That's 16 studios at $951 per month. And again, this is income-based, so there is a qualifying, there's a max income for any resident, and that's $41,664 for the studios. 56 one-bedrooms at $1,016 per month, and that's, again, a max income of $44,640. 56 two-bedrooms at $1,229 per month, max income $53,568, and 16 three-bedrooms at $1,427 per month with a max income of $61,901. These rental rates are approximately 60% below average median income of the greater MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. That includes Franklin County and Delaware County. So you may be thinking, wow, that's 60%, that still is kind of high. It is, because we're averaging with much wealthier counties. Tenants have to apply to move into these units. Clearly, there is a income qualifier, and they can make up to a certain amount to qualify to live in the different units. Mayor Scheffler attended most, if not all, of the meetings that I have held with Zinken and Barker, and up until maybe late summer, now Mayor McDaniel was in these meetings with us as well. Both of them supported the project. We talked through a lot of the steps of what they're proposing and what might happen going forward. Then in October of 2023, Zinken attended our Economic Development Subcommittee meeting, where we introduced the project to the attendees, which included now Mayor McDaniel, Larry Ailes, Bob Wolfinger, and Corey Schoonover. And Larry was gracious enough to support, or to voice support, ask what can we do, what are the next steps, what's going to happen next. So we were really excited about that. And then last week, Councilwoman Hoop and I sat down and discussed the project in detail as well. So this project is going to estimate about 30 to 35 million in development, and I did not mention, so this is the layout for the property. This is proposed. This is what we think now with all of the information that the developers have at this moment. So how is this project going to benefit the community is a big deal. We know, I've spoken to multiple employers talking about workforce, talking about attracting talent. And the big quote I heard was, "We have a large job base, but an attainable housing desert in Lancaster." I have another, I didn't distribute this, but you can see it, and I can certainly give you one of these. In the last 2 years, in 22 and 23, we have not built any multifamily units. We've had a lot of success in 2021, building a couple market rate apartment complexes. Those went fast, real fast. And even in 2020, we had a lot of success. But the last 2 years, we haven't had any of our projects get over the finish line, and we're hoping to do that now. So we have a large job base, but an attainable housing desert right now. Our employers have been very clear about finding workers, that their workers cannot find attainable housing close to where they work. We had a meeting at the Workforce Center at the end of last year. We're working through building out a manufacturing pre-apprenticeship program. We had 10 employers working with OU and Hawking professors. And their most pressing question was, what are we going to do about housing? Because their workforce is not finding what they need. I also talked to Rick Zabrak, our Workforce and Economic Development Director for the county. He said having a concentration of workforce such as this complex can help the county structure transportation to more easily connect employees to their place of business. One thing I want to point out when we look at the map here is that this housing, this site is so close to our retail corridor. So there are jobs there, but there's also quality of life there. People can get to their groceries, they can get to their shopping. And then we're only 2.3 miles from kind of the heart of the industrial park, where we have many job openings. We also have many jobs that are taken by people who are looking for more affordable housing. And when I say affordable, I mean that fits into their budget. I want to go back. I skipped over a section I was supposed to mention. I want to talk a little bit more about the property. So this is 21 acres. The city has owned this property since 2008. And the highest and best use for this property is dense residential. You can see it's not that large, so that this is not going to be an ideal location for single-family homes. And to kind of reinforce the highest and best use, this property is currently zoned as commercial neighborhood district, which allows multi-unit dwellings of 4 or more units per building under the brand new zoning code. So we will not need to rezone this property for this development. Again, the location's ideal, right between the retail corridor and one of our job centers. There hasn't been any significant interest by developers or otherwise of this property. And of course, Mayor Scheffler could go back 6 years and could attest to that. And, you know, this property is not, it's going to be a challenge. It's narrow. There are, there are unknowns to this property. So there will be due diligence that needs to be done, as well as a sewer extension. So I talked a little bit about how the project will benefit the community, but more importantly, the project is going to benefit the workforce, the individuals that are making, anywhere between below 40,000 up to 60,000, right? And those jobs include a lot of city jobs, actually. So City of Lancaster's zoning inspector starts at about $38,000. So that's someone who, depending on which unit they were looking for, they could, they would qualify for all of them. According to Glassdoor.com, teachers in Lancaster can start as low as $39,000. Crown Cork and Seal has entry operator positions for about $44,000. West Rock, also in the industrial park, has an industrial maintenance technician that starts at about $47,000. So I think, I had to double check that qualifies as well. So this is an opportunity for folks that have jobs, because you have to apply, you have to prove your income. but that we can keep these individuals in our community. Think about someone who's just graduated from college, someone who's just come out of the workforce center and has that new skilled trade and now has their job. We can keep them here rather than the brain drain out to Franklin County, where there are lots of opportunities, lots of options for housing. So I'll just wrap up by saying that what's our timeline and what are our next steps? So I'm asking you to approve the transfer of the property from the city to the port so that we can get into contract with our developers. They're going to start a due diligence period of about 12 to 18 months. We hope to be under construction in about mid to late 2025. And I want to assure you that that we have reviewed the contract, and there are some provisions in here that are here to protect the city and the Port Authority. So if Zinkin is unable to develop the property will go back to the port, and if everyone wishes so, it'll go back to the city. The port does not need to hold it if it's not necessary. If Zinkin decides they can't develop the site, if the due diligence is too lengthy, too expensive, the good thing is that we'll have an idea, or if the due diligence uncovers something that makes the site undevelopable, we're going to have that information. We're going to understand what the facts are on this property, and we're going to be able to kind of set out our own next steps. Is this something that we can, provide for the next developer, or is this a real stopper? And also, Zinkin won't be able to sell this property to anybody else. So, in general, this is a workforce housing project. This is a project where this is an opportunity for folks that have guaranteed income, can live close to where they work, can come into the community and stay here and live comfortably in close proximity to a great job center such as the Rockville Industrial Park. And we're hoping to get some development going since we haven't for the last 2 years. We're hoping that 2024 is our year. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I have a few questions. Most of them just center around the actual, like, what this is going to impact Edie Road, right? Because that property is in the flood zone, but that's for the developer. My questions more are, Edie Road is already narrow, right? And just before the mock-ups entrance is a tight bridge. And so I just worry, like, what is the impact going to be on our traffic on Edie Road, given we've heard discussions for the last 2 years about what it would take to widen it? And so I just worry adding 144 units in this area is going to really mess up Edie Road, given I drive down that road almost daily. So do you know, like, where currently what if there's been any traffic studies or anything done for this yet?
So we haven't done any traffic studies yet, but our city engineer has been in conversation with our developers, has not waved any red flags thinking that we're going to have any emergency situations. There will be a traffic impact study done at some point, and we'll take those results as they come and see what needs to happen, what should happen. But like I said, Kurt's been in conversation. This would not be a surprise to him, and he would have let us know if traffic, adding traffic would be a real stopper to the project.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Director, thank you so much for providing this information to us this evening. We appreciate it. I have a question that's a follow-up. I know that you mentioned what the proposed rates are for rental.
Yes.
Is there a way that you could get us what our market rates are so that we could see a comparison of where you are as far as affordability versus what the market rates are? Because when I heard the concept that a 3-bedroom was going to be, what was it? 1,400 or
right.
more?
That's right.
And the income cutoff is like 61. That's like, I think 27% of that person's income. It seems rather high.
That's right. It's 60% below the average median income. And like I said, the 60% is still relatively, is on the higher side for our community because our average income is lower than, say, Franklin County. I can tell you roughly that The two most recent market apartment complexes, I would say they start in the 1,500s for one bedrooms. So, and they go as high as 2,600. I think I was just looking at the flats recently, it's like 2,600 for a townhouse style. So they are still relatively low, and this is an assumption of having one income per per unit.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a reason that Franklin and Delaware are included? Is that like a federal requirement?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. These figures are coming from HUD, and they include the whole MSA. And so we are lumped in with Delaware and Franklin.
Thank you.
So this is just, maybe I missed it. So with that being the rent, is there anything, I'm not talking about appliances, nothing like that. Is anything included in that rent? Like water, is there anything that's included in the rent that's just not?
That's right. Probably included in the rent, I don't believe so. I think utilities are going to be separate.
I didn't know if like water, or trash,
Right.
whatever would be.
I don't, well, does the city, I'm unsure of, no, city, you pay, okay. I was gonna say, do you pay separate for trash pickup in the city of Lancaster for just an average citizen? Yes, okay. Yeah, so it would be part of your utility.
Okay.
I thought I recalled in the meeting that we had, the subcommittee meeting, that they said it would include the utilities.
It does include utilities. I brought the experts.
This is very high if not. I mean, if you've got to pay this and then all these
Yeah.
utilities, this is high. I mean, because I'm thinking 39,000, and this is before taxes are taken out. And that's, I'm thinking what I make, and it's like, yeah, that's a little chunk of change to have to pay rent on if, before taxes.
Yeah.
Sorry, and my name is Drew Kelly, so I'm one of the developers, and I wanted to help Stephanie out here just a little bit. Thank you for the chance to kind of answer some questions, but to kind of clarify, Stephanie did such a great job presenting that. The rents that she mentioned are maximum rents we're allowed to charge as a developer. That doesn't necessarily mean that will be the rent. We can't charge above that number. And as far as what's included, so there utilities, typically there's an additional charge for that, but we're also capped on the amount that we can charge for utilities as well. It varies a little bit, it's like around $100 a month on top of the rent. But there's caps to all those. And so I know that some of those rent numbers look kind of daunting, but we can't charge anything more than that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's where we'll have the rent set, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
I had a question for the developer.
Oh, sure.
What's your plan to deal with the floodplain?
So there's a portion of the property that's outside of the floodplain. Most of the property we won't even disturb because I think, maybe 15 of the 20 acres are within the floodplain or flood zone. But there's a small piece closest to Coles that's outside of that flood area, which is where we would propose building the project.
Okay.
This is a great project for the city, and we need the housing, and I commend everybody on that. My quick question, it sounds like this is really moving down the road pretty quick, and which is good news. Are there any will there be any impact on city revenue on concessions or things of that nature?
Not as I would say, as we have the deal proposed, no. I mean, as far as, a line item or expense item to the city, no.
Okay, no, I'm looking for things like income tax. I'm looking things like fire impact fees. I'm looking things of that nature that would diminish our revenue if it's thrown out or not.
Sure, yeah, if I'm understanding your question correctly, no. The short answer, yeah. There's some pieces, we're kind of asking for permission to enter into a purchase and development agreement. So when we get into that, then this kind of gets solidified a little bit more. So I think some of the details we can't really iron out till we're actually actively negotiating.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm always looking at, concessions cities, counties make has an impact on the revenue.
Yeah, we're not asking for any kind of cash infusion or monies from the city kind of outside of what's been proposed. So if that makes sense, if I'm answering that correctly. I mean.
Yeah, thank you.
And I love your optimistic view of this moving quickly, because we have been talking for a little over a year now, and really, like Drew said, we're trying to enter into contracts so they can start a probably lengthy due diligence period. So if you drive past and you're wondering why nothing's coming out of the ground, it's going to take us a little while to get into due diligence.
There are some unique challenges with this site that will require a little bit more time. There's an environmental study. I think there was maybe the possibility of historic and prehistoric materials on the site. So we engage with an engineering firm that specializes in that to make sure we're not disturbing anything historic or prehistoric. So there's a timeline to that that's, I think, either state or federally mandated. And then a few other things we need to figure out is just how we get sewer to the site. But that's all part of the development process. And if we could move tomorrow, we would, but as soon as we get through the red tape, we'll be ready to go.
Thank you.
I have a quick questions, more for maybe the law director or anybody, or Stephanie. Do we know which fund or which department this parcel belongs to?
It came from water pollution control back in the day. Yes.
So is it still underneath water pollution? They purchased it, it's theirs? I'm just looking at ORC and the protecting of their funds and assets versus.
It was deeded to the city of Lancaster, so it belongs to the city of Lancaster.
Okay, I'm just looking at, on an ORC that protects their assets. I just want to make sure that we're not doing, crossing where I have to watch to make sure that they get fair market value, that it's not just $1 and things don't come back to them since it was their funds to purchase it.
It was deeded to the city of Lancaster.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted, because on anything of protecting their assets.
Are you reading?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. That's all.
Thank you. I believe that concludes that discussion. We're no other ordinances at this point in time. There'll be some down later in the agenda. Now I'm going to move to departmental updates. If any departments like to come forward and give us an update, I'd appreciate it.
Good evening. I figured now is a good time to give an update for LDOT since we had snow over the weekend. Just to let you know, we did have snow over the weekend, which wasn't a bad thing for us because we need to use up some salt so we can tell ODOT how much salt we want to buy this year, which is one of the pieces of legislation that's up for second reading tonight. Once we get that passed, we'll let ODOT know how many tons we need to buy this year or next year. This year we have to buy 1,000 tons. We have to buy at least 900, and we can buy up to 1,100. Currently, our salt's running just over $60 a ton, so hopefully ODOT can give us a good price for going into next year. But right now, our barn's about 80% full, so we need to use some more. But just for some numbers, our guys came in about 2 a.m. on Friday night after it started snowing, and they worked clear through to midnight Saturday night, so that's about 34 hours worth of pushing snow around and salting the streets. We did use 345 tons of that salt we need to buy, which was good. And we laid down 14,310 gallons of brine and/or brine mix, which we cut that with a product called Ice Bite. And what we do with that is we actually pre-wet our salt before it comes out of the trucks. Helps it keep from bouncing around and bouncing off the roads. It kind of lets it stick to the road and lets it work a little faster. So with all that, this past snowstorm, if you factored in all of our materials, our manpower, and the equipment we use, we have a little over $67,000 in this event. So even though we don't like snow, we do need it, but it does cost us. So just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And if you got any questions, you can give me a call down at the shop. If you want to see what we do during the middle of the night, you can come down and we can give you a ride in the truck.
Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate the update.
All righty.
Chief?
Thank you. I'm glad Tim went first. I wanted to reinforce what he said about giving him a call down at his shop. He will pick up the phone. He's one of the department heads that will pick up their phone and talk to you when you call, along with Charlie. And I know I'm leaving people out, and I apologize for that, but he was first, so he gets the props. We've had storms, snow, like he said, 2 a.m. Our units are usually out with their units, and we get so much feedback. We were redoing a dispatch room, and we called to get an electrician, and he immediately came. So our relationship with them is really good, and we're lucky to have LDOT, Tim and Charlie, and everybody else I'm forgetting to mention. The reason I came up, really just two things. It's end of year, so we're doing end of year things. And I think a large part of my responsibility of chief of police is to provide an avenue of transparency when critical incidents occur, to answer questions that the public has, for sure, and then also questions you have, but also just as important is to provide transparency when our men and women do really good things. In the last week and a half or so, they've done some really good things. About a week and a half ago, we had a barricade, a subject with a gun. Started off potentially as a hostage situation. And long story short, when our supervisors and SWAT team arrived on scene, one of our patrol officers, Jay Delgado, had established a really good line of communication with the subject. And our hostage negotiators, who also arrived on scene, had a very, very easy way in front of them because Jay did such a good job. So I'm really proud of him and the job he did, and it speaks to a lot of the hard work and training that they do. And that was just one of our patrol officers. That had the ability to bring that to a peaceful resolution. He walked out, no issues. The second thing, that same day that I was briefed on that, I had an email roll across my desk, kind of an interesting issue. It was an issue, but not really an issue, where it mentioned officers that were giving some of the unsheltered, rides to different places. And if we have the ability to do that, we will do that. But in reviewing some of that, I was notified of some officers stopping at fast food restaurants or, Dollar Generals and picking up socks and stuff. And that doesn't get reported. We don't do releases on that. But I do think it's important that the public knows that these officers do every end of the spectrum. And these are your officers. They're in Lancaster. They're working here. They're doing this every day. And I just think they definitely deserve some recognition for that, because it just doesn't happen that often. So very proud of these guys. They do a great job, and I just wanted to move that forward. The second thing, we have Officer of the Year that we vote on every year. And typically, it's the officers that are leaders on the shifts that have done really good things. They've been recognized for it, et cetera, et cetera. And the past couple of years, we've really emphasized leadership at the department and really probably pushed too hard on the supervision to do the right thing and not be retired on duty and really just push to be leaders on the shift. And I'm proud to say we got to fix this issue, but for the second year in a row, all 4 shifts have nominated their supervisors as the Officer of the Year. So it's going to come down to 4 supervisors for Officer of the Year. So we're going to have to find a way to cut the supervisors out of that voting, but I'm elated that the officers think that much of the supervision to do that. So we've not ran that vote yet, and surely we'll put that out on social media in our yearly annual report, et cetera. But I just think, again, the public should know that the individuals out there leading these young officers in this critical job, those supervisors are doing a fantastic job too. And I'm really proud of that, and we will continue doing that, but I think that's something that should be recognized. So that's all I had.
Thank you. Any questions of Chief Snyder?
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Any other departmental updates? Okay, now we'll move on to tonight's meeting prep with President Porter.
Thank you, Chairman Wolfinger. We have 2 ordinances on this evening that are worth mentioning. Temporary Ordinance 824. It's an ordinance to amend the City of Lancaster zoning map to change the zoning of 6.99 plus or minus acres identified as Fairfield County Auditor Tax Parcel Numbers 053067300, 053067500, and 053-506-7510 from Central Business District to Service Industrial. There will be a public hearing on this proposed rezoning, which will be put into the council agenda, and everybody will be notified of that. This particular rezoning was approved by the Planning Commission on July 11th and is recommended to City Council for final approval. The other temporary ordinance is 924, an ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances, part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of the City of Lancaster, and to declare an emergency. This is an annual piece of legislation that updates and conforms the city ordinances to any new state of Ohio proposed legislation. Law Director Hall, did you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, that's accurate, because a lot of our traffic and criminal code mirror the Ohio Revised Code exactly. Whenever the General Assembly updates the code, we have to incorporate those constitutions into our code as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And that's all for tonight's meeting prep. Chairman Wolfinger.
Thank you very much. Any other items for Finance Committee? Anything else any of you would like to bring up? My first Finance Committee meeting, and I think former Chair Stoughton can verify, this is probably the longest Finance Committee meeting that I've been in attendance for a lot of years. So I broke your record, I'm sure. With that, I would...
Nice try. Try to make them longer.
Yeah. I'll hear it later. So I'm looking for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
And second?
Second.
Second, we are adjourned.
Thank you. We'll take a brief recess, and Lancaster City Council meeting, regular meeting, will start at 7:05.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Taylor with Habitat for Humanity of Southeast Ohio. Here at Habitat for Humanity, our mission is simple. We bring the community together to build strength, stability, and self-reliance through shelter. Achieving this mission is made possible with the support of generous local partners like the Buckeye Cares program. That means Buckeye will make a donation with every vehicle sold this month. From all of us at Habitat for Humanity, we say thank you, Buckeye, for once again offering your generous support.
If you would join me in a moment of prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Calling the regular meeting of Lancaster City Council for January 22nd, 2024. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everybody for coming to tonight's meeting. I'm going to go outside the order of business for just a moment and welcome our new council member for the 3rd Ward, Mr. Luchtenberg, Steve Luchtenberg. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Okay, if the clerk would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ehlers?
Here.
Mr. Ailes?
Here.
Mr. Bizjack?
Here.
Mrs. Hoop?
Here.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Here.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Here.
Mr. Schoonover?
Here.
Ms. Teener?
Here.
Mr. Wing?
Here.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Here.
Let the record reflect that all 10 members of Lancaster City Council are present. Reading and disposing of the journal.
Yes, the regular meeting minutes dated January 8th, 2024.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to read and file the journal. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Passes. We'll move on to the, do we have any reports of city officials?
Yes, there are several. Email dated January 8th, 2024 from Council President Pro Tem Schoonover with proposed council committee assignments. Series of emails between council and city department associates regarding 2024 council committee meetings. Email dated January 12th, 2024 regarding the 3rd Ward council member appointment from President Porter. Email dated January 12th, 2024 regarding the annual City of Lancaster fraud questionnaire for the state of audit from Auditor Nettles. Series of emails between the Economic Development and Engineering departments regarding the Corpo dedicated funds application. Series of emails between President Porter and council members regarding an upcoming seminar. Lettered notification received January 17th, 2024 via certified mail regarding a proposed residential rental development location on South Ewing Street from LDG Development. Email dated January 19th, 2024 with the upcoming Economic Development Committee meeting agenda from Mrs. Hoop. Email dated January 20th, 2024 regarding an attachment to the draft council meeting minutes dated January 8th, 2024 from Mr. Wolfinger. And finally, email dated January 21st regarding the draft Finance Committee meeting agenda from Mr. Wolfinger.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to file the reports of city officials. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Those pass. We move now on to communication.
There is one series of emails dated January 9th, 2024 regarding the 2024 Master Equipment Lease Purchase Agreement for cemetery equipment from Pamela Franks with Squire Patton Boggs LLP.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
We have a motion to receive and file the communications. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We will file the communications. Are there any special presentations or awards this evening?
There are none.
Are there any petitions or memorials this evening?
There are none.
Okay, at this time we have permission of voters and taxpayers to address City Council. Are there any individuals who would like to address City Council this evening? Seeing none, we thank you for your attendance at tonight's meeting. We all now move on to the reports of standing committees.
There are none to be presented.
Reports of special committees.
There are none to be presented.
We don't have any public hearings this evening. So we will move on to the reading of resolutions. Third reading, we have no resolutions. Second reading, move on. Temporary resolution 324.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation to purchase rock salt for the 2024-2025 winter season, coming out of Public Works, sponsored by Ms. Teener and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Councilmember Teener.
Second of three readings.
Okay, second of three readings for temporary resolution 324. Temporary resolution 624.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for the solids handling facility, coming out of water pollution control, sponsored by Mr. Wing and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember Wing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 6-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 624. Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could just make a couple comments. This is a very simple piece of legislation. We are authorizing an engineering agreement for the solids handling facility not to exceed $330,000. The current facility is nearing the end of its life.
Thank you, Councilmember Wing. Any further discussion on the motion to suspend for temporary resolution 624? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop? Yes. Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 624 passes 10-0. Councilmember Wing.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 624.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 624. Discussion?
No, nothing further.
Hearing any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop? Yes. Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 624 passes 10-0. Temporary resolution 724.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a local public agency federal local LET project agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation for the Memorial Pierce Walkways Project PID 120594 and design pre-construction services contracts with various consultants to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor and the LDOT Improvement Fund 3014. Coming out of Code Enforcement and Zoning, sponsored by Mr. Ehlers and seconded by Mrs. Hoop.
Councilmember Ehlers.
It's the second of three readings, please.
Second of three readings on temporary resolution 724. Temporary resolution 1324.
A resolution authorizing the Lancaster Police Department to apply for the 2024-2025 Drug Use Prevention Grant, coming out of Safety, sponsored by Mr. Bizchak and seconded by Mr. Ehlers.
Councilmember Bizchak.
Second of three readings.
Second of three readings on temporary resolution 1324. We're going to now move on to first readings. Temporary resolution 1524.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the purchase of chemicals for use by the Division of Water, coming out of Water Pollution Control, sponsored by Mr. Wing and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember Wing.
First of three readings, please.
First of three readings on temporary resolution 1524. Temporary resolution 1624.
A resolution to authorize the Surface Safety Director to advertise for bids and enter into contracts for the purchase of pipe and fittings for use by the Division of Water, coming out of Water Pollution Control, sponsored by Mr. Wing and seconded by Ms. Teener.
Councilmember Wing.
First of three readings, please.
First of three readings on temporary resolution 1624. Temporary resolution 1724.
A resolution to amend the Utilities Collection Fund 7006 expense budget and amend the certificate of appropriation with the county auditor, coming out of Finance, sponsored by Mr. Wolfinger and seconded by Mr. Ehlers.
Councilmember Wolfinger.
Thank you. This legislation is bringing utility expense budget and a revenue budget into place, and this will be first reading.
Okay, thank you. That'll be first of three readings on temporary resolution 1724. Temporary resolution 1824.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for bids to construct the Concentrate Discharge Improvements Project coming out of Water Pollution Control, sponsored by Mr. Wing and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember Wing.
Yes, first of three readings, please.
First of three readings on temporary resolution 1824. Temporary resolution 1924.
A resolution to create a new fund named Violet Township City of Lancaster JED Fund 8058 and to establish revenue and expense accounts coming out of finance, sponsored by Mr. Wolfinger, seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember Wolfinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council suspends its rules and waives the second and third readings of resolution numbered 19-24.
Second.
We have a motion to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings of temporary resolution 1924. Discussion? Do you have any discussion?
No.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion to suspend? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 10-0. Councilmember Wolfinger.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2024?
1924, yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was looking at the next one. We're moving too fast.
That's okay.
I need to move faster. Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter up on the written record resolution 19-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 1924. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. This legislation establishes new funds for revenue expenses of the recently established Violet Township Joint Economic Development District, or known as the JED.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to pass. Temporary resolution 1924 passes 10-0. Temporary resolution 2024.
A resolution to increase receipts, appropriate from the unencumbered balance, and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor and the Violet Township City of Lancaster JED Fund 8058, coming out of finance, sponsored by Mr. Wolfinger and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Councilmember Wolfinger.
Yes, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waives the second and third readings of temporary resolution 20-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 2024. Discussion?
I'll hold it.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 2024 passes 10-0. Councilmember Wolfinger.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporary 20-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 2024. Discussion?
Yes, please. This is a companion piece to the prior legislation, temporary resolution 1924. The purpose is to establish a revenue and expense budget for this program.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizjack?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 2024 passes 10-0. Temporary resolution 2124.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the general fund 1001, authorize then and now certificates for payment of an invoice for annual codification and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Finance, sponsored by Mr. Wolfinger and seconded by Mr. Ehlers.
Councilmember Wolfinger.
Thank you. The law director's office contracted with American Legal Publishing Company to codify and publish the city's codified ordinance to include 2023 updates, and the final cost was a little bit more than what was budgeted, which is the purpose of this resolution.
Okay.
And 2 readings.
Okay. So it will be the first of 2 readings on temporary resolution 2124. Temporary resolution 2224.
A resolution to appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate of appropriations with the county auditor in the wastewater replacement and improvement fund 6023, authorize the issuance of then and now certificates for payment of bills. Coming out of water pollution control, sponsored by Mr. Wing and seconded by Ms. Teener.
Councilmember Wing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive its the second and third reading of temporary resolution 2224.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the second and third readings, to suspend the rules and waive the second and third readings of temporary resolution 2224. Discussion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We just briefly discussed this in finance. This is the reappropriation piece that we just discussed.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend temporary resolution 2224 passes 10-0. Councilmember Wing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record this resolution temporarily numbered 2224.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 2224. Any further discussion?
Nothing further.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 2224 passes 10-0. Temporary resolution 2324.
A resolution to approve a then and now for payment of a January 2024 bill for the Utility Collections Fund 7006, coming out of service, sponsored by Mr. Ailes and seconded by Mrs. Hoop.
Councilmember Ailes.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we suspend council's rules and waive the second and third readings of resolution temporarily number 23-24.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the rules and waive the second and third reading of temporary resolution 2324. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser? Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Motion to suspend temporary resolution 2324 passes 10-0. Councilmember Ailes.
Yes, I move that we pass and engross and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily number 23-24.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to pass temporary resolution, pass, engross, and enter upon the written record temporary resolution 2324. Any discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
No.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mr. Hoop?
Yes.
Sorry, Mrs.
You're
Hoop.
fine.
I'm sorry. Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
No.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary resolution 2324 passes 8-2. Temporary resolution 2424.
A resolution to increase receipts, appropriate from the unencumbered balance, and amend the certificate of other sources and appropriations with the county auditor and the Fire Insurance Escrow Fund 8023, coming out of finance, sponsored by Mr. Wolfinger and seconded by Mr. Ailes.
Councilmember Wolfinger.
Thank you. This legislation is to establish a revenue and expense budget for the fire escrow account, and this will be the first of 3 readings.
First of 3 readings on temporary resolution 2424. Are there any further resolutions to come before City Council this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to the reading of ordinances. We have no ordinances on 3rd reading, so we'll move on to 2nd reading. Temporary ordinance 224.
An ordinance to accept a donation of approximately 5.199 plus or minus acres coming out of Council of the Whole, sponsored by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Ms. Teener.
Councilmember Schoonover.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council place on the table temporary ordinance 224.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to table temporary ordinance 224. And a motion to table is non-debatable at this point. So we will go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizcheck?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to table temporary ordinance 224 passes 10-0. Temporary ordinance 524.
An ordinance to amend the zoning map subject to passage of the annexation of 45.1 plus or minus acres in Pleasant Township and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Council of the Whole, sponsored by Mr. Schoonover and seconded by Ms. Teener. And we do have a public hearing on this on February 12th.
Okay. Councilmember Schoonover.
Just the second of 3 readings, please.
Second of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 524, noting that we have a public hearing set for February 12th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. We'll move on to first readings. Temporary ordinance 824.
An ordinance to amend the City of Lancaster zoning map to change the zoning of .99 plus or minus acres identified as Fairfield County Auditor Tax Parcel Numbers 0535067300, 0535067500, and 0535067510 from Central Business District to Service Industrial, coming out of Code Enforcement and Zoning, sponsored by Mr. Ehlers and seconded by Mr. Luchtenberg.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, so I'd just like to take a moment to discuss this piece of legislation. Coming out of city planning, it had 2 opposition votes, along with, obviously, it ended up passing, but I just would like to talk about how the company that they're looking to place in this area would build compactors to build on top of truck chassis so that we could continue to build in that area. This area includes several other businesses, so I personally believe this is a fine fitting for the rezoning. And this will be the first of 3 readings.
Okay, since you had some discussion on that, is there any further discussion at this time? Temporary ordinance 824? Okay. Hearing none, first of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 824. Temporary ordinance 924.
An ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of Lancaster, Ohio, and to declare an emergency. Coming out of law, sponsored by Mr. Nyheiser and seconded by Mr. Bizcheck.
Councilmember Nyheiser.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the 2nd and 3rd readings of resolution temporarily numbered 9-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the 2nd and 3rd reading of temporary ordinance 924. Any discussion?
Not yet.
Okay. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizcheck?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules on temporary ordinance 924 passes 10-0. Councilmember Nyheiser.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record ordinance temporarily numbered 9-24.
Second. We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record ordinance numbered temporarily 924. Discussion?
I would defer to Law Director Hall, please.
Sure. So, where were we? Say 1024. So, the Lancaster Port Authority Executive Director Stephanie Bosco was here at Finance Committee, and she spoke to temporary ordinance 1024.
924.
Oh, I'm so sorry,
No, we're okay.
924. I apologize.
No.
My bad for not paying attention to begin with. I'm doing 6 things at the same time. So 924 is essentially what I described again in Finance Committee. I apologize. A lot of the Lancaster codified ordinances mirror the traffic and criminal code of the Ohio Revised Code precisely. And whenever those get adjusted one way or the other by the General Assembly, then we have to adjust ours. And the codification company that did our zoning code update is responsible for collating those throughout the year and then codifying them with our final codification when that gets done. So that's why it's all together and it's kind of a rush to get through because we want to make ours match online as quickly as possible as we can with the Ohio Revised Code because it's confusing to the public, obviously, if the Ohio Revised Code has one law and Lancaster codified ordinances say something else. So that's the reason for the rush. And I apologize again.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Law Director Hall. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mr. Ailes?
Yes.
Mr. Bizchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoop?
Yes.
Mr. Luchtenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Nyheiser?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Ms. Teener?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Mr. Wolfinger?
Yes.
Temporary ordinance 9-24 passes 10-0. Temporary ordinance 1024. We're here now, Director Hall. We're on 1024.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
An ordinance to authorize the mayor to deed approximately 21.746 plus or minus acres owned by the city of Lancaster and further identified as Fairfield County, Ohio parcel number 05318000450 for $1 to the Lancaster Port Authority and to execute any and all documents necessary for the transfer thereof and to declare an emergency. Coming out of Economic Development, sponsored by Mrs. Hoop and seconded by Mr. Schoonover.
Councilmember Hoop.
First of 3 readings.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance temporarily numbered 10-24. Are there any further ordinances that need to come before Lancaster City Council this evening? Any tabled legislation that needs to come before council? Okay, unfinished business. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, I just wanted to apologize to Mr. Schoonover and to you and the clerk regarding the tabling of ordinance 224. I got a late notice from the property owner requesting that we put that on the table. He still wants to donate the property to the city, but he has some advice from an attorney asking him to delay it. So in order for him to figure out what he's going to do, he's going to get back with us. But on the table, we can bring it off when he's ready to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pesky lawyers get in the way all the time, don't they? Any new business? Okay, we're going to move on to announcements of scheduled meetings.
Next regular sessions of council for the next 30 days. February 12th at 6:30 here in council chambers, there will be a public hearing on temporary ordinance 524. February 26th here in council chambers at 6:30 p.m. No upcoming special meetings. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Economic Development, January 25th at 7:30 a.m. in City Hall in the 1897 conference room. Water Pollution Control, January 26th at 7:30 a.m., City Hall in the 1897 conference room. Safety, February 2nd at 8 a.m., City Hall in the 1897 conference room. Law, February 5th at 7:30 a.m., City Hall, 1897 conference room. Public Works, February 9th at 7:30 a.m., City Hall, 1897 conference room. Code Enforcement Zoning, February 12th at 8 a.m., City Hall, 1897 conference room. Finance, February 12th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. And finally, Finance, February 26th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Thank you, Clerk Kreitz. Reading of bills.
There are no bills before council this evening.
There's no need for an executive session. At this time, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make that motion. We adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Thank you, everybody. Yes, and please don't forget to sign your legislation. So please remain and get with the clerk if you were the sponsor or the second on any legislation. Thank you.